Imagine pouring your soul into a film only to watch it get sliced, diced, and stitched back together until it's practically unrecognizable. That's exactly what happened to some of the wildest pre-code movies once Hollywood's censors came crashing in. How far would the moral gatekeepers go to rewrite cinema history? And how many classics got bulldozed in the process? Buckle up, because we're digging into 10 legendary films so brutally recut you might not even recognize them today. Babyface, 1933. Picture this: Barbara Stanwyck, in full pre-code glory, playing a woman so unapologetically ambitious she practically weaponizes every man she meets. Babyface wasn't just scandalous, it was radioactive. The original cut had Stanwyck's Lily powers rising from small-town abuse to big-city power by coldly trading her charm for professional advancement, climbing a skyscraper literally and figuratively, one office romance at a time. It was a film that said in no uncertain terms, if the world's rigged against you, rig it right back. But when the Hays Code enforcers got their hands on it, they didn't just trim a little fat, they performed full-on surgery. Scenes showing Lily's frank manipulation were slashed, dialogue was neutered, and entire subplots got tossed into the incinerator. Most criminally, the ending was flipped on its head. Originally, Lily walked away richer, wiser, and, dare I say, triumphant, a slap in the face to the era's bad girls must pay morality. The recut version? Suddenly, Lily was racked with guilt, forced to repent, and faced a heavily moralized fate, because heaven forbid a woman be seen as clever and victorious. What's wild is that for decades, no one even knew how much had been lost. The so-called edited version became the only one audiences could see, cementing the myth that the movie was less daring than it actually was. It wasn't until 2004, yes, you read that right, when a nearly pristine original print was discovered at the Library of Congress. Audiences finally saw just how radical Babyface truly was. So next time you hear someone call the Hays Code a set of simple guidelines, remember what happened to Lily Powers. Hollywood didn't just slap a Band-Aid on the movie. They performed a total identity transplant. And for years, nobody even realized the real story was missing. Red-Headed Woman, 1932. Jean Harlow was never the kind of star you could shrink down to fit polite society's expectations, and Red-Headed Woman is her most infamous middle finger to the establishment. In the original, Harlow's Lil Andrews is pure, undiluted chaos, seducing her way through high society, breaking up marriages and laughing all the way to the bank. She's not punished for her antics. If anything, she's rewarded. It's a pre-code fever dream, brash, bold, and brimming with double entendres. Enter the code, and suddenly, Red-Headed Woman became a problem. The censors didn't just ask for minor changes, they demanded a total moral overhaul. First, they axed dialogue so spicy it could burn through celluloid. Gags about Harlow's lingerie collection, sassy quips about bedroom eyes, and a notorious scene involving a see-through negligee? Gone. But that wasn't enough for the morality police. They pressured MGM to rewrite the ending, so Lil faced comeuppance for her sins. In the butchered version, the audience is led to believe she gets her just desserts. Her rise to the top suddenly a cautionary tale instead of a riotous romp. What makes Red-Headed Woman so legendary is how obvious the tension is between the film's DNA and the censor's demands. Even in its recut form, you can feel Harlow pushing at the edges, winking at the audience as if to say, "Can you believe they're making me pretend to feel bad?" It's a weird, exhilarating tug of war. You can practically hear the filmmakers gritting their teeth, cutting away one outrageous moment after another, until only a sanitized shell remained. But here's the real kicker. Even mangled Red-Headed Woman couldn't be tamed. The movie's core, the sense of fun, the sly subversion, the sheer nerve, still burns through the layers of censorship like a red-hot poker. And decades later, film fans would finally get to see what Harlow and her collaborators intended, as uncut prints resurfaced in archives, restoring Lil's unapologetic legacy. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1931. Let's talk about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the version that sent parents clutching their pearls and censors scrambling for scissors. This wasn't your average monster flick. This was psychological horror in its rawest form, with Frederick March morphing from genteel scientist to predatory brute. in a performance that makes modern split-personality stories look tame. Pre-Code, this movie was a feverish descent into the darkest corners of human desire and cruelty, shot through with violence, suggestion, and a dizzying sense of dread. But when the censors took over, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde found itself on the business end of a cinematic hacksaw. Scenes that hinted at Hyde's sexual aggression, moments that made you squirm not just from fright, but from implication, were sliced right out. The transformation sequences, once celebrated for their hallucinatory brilliance, were chopped and softened to avoid excessive horror. The already grim tale was whittled down until it was little more than a morality play, with the bark chewed off. The most shocking casualty? Miriam Hopkins' Ivy, a sex worker caught in Hyde's grasp, originally the movie's tragic heart. Her scenes, charged with desperation and peril, were ruthlessly trimmed or outright deleted, turning her character into little more than a plot device. The cuts didn't just dilute the impact, they changed the entire focus of the story. The film's original complexity, its exploration of Victorian repression, class, and the monstrous side of polite society, was papered over with bland respectability. To add insult to injury, MGM's 1941 remake, produced after the code took full effect, was so sanitized it was practically unrecognizable, a glossy shadow of the original. For years, only bowdlerized versions of the 1931 classic circulated, robbing new audiences of its primal power. It wasn't until home video and restoration projects that people could finally experience the film's full, shocking bite. Today, watching the restored Doctor, Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is like opening a time capsule to an era when horror dared to confront our worst instincts, not just hint at them. Censorship may have tried to stuff the monster back in the box, but Hyde always finds a way out. Tarzan and His Mate, 1934. If you think Tarzan movies are just about a guy in a loincloth and a few monkeys, Tarzan and His Mate is here to swing kick that idea right out of your mind. Released on the eve of strict code enforcement, this movie didn't just push boundaries, it pole vaulted over them. Johnny Weissmuller's Tarzan and Maureen O'Sullivan's Jane weren't just romantic partners. They were openly living together in the jungle, making no apologies and absolutely no attempt to cover up their chemistry. And then, there's that infamous swimming scene. In the uncut version, Jane, doubled by Olympic swimmer Josephine McKim, swims completely unclothed alongside Tarzan. It's an extended, ethereal sequence that's both daring and tender, capturing a sense of freedom and wildness no studio would dare replicate for decades. Enter the censors, stage left, carrying axes. When the code started being enforced, that entire sequence was chopped, along with any hint that Tarzan and Jane shared a bedroom or, a tree branch. The new, improved cut gave Jane a modesty swimsuit, cranked down the intimacy, and did its best to sell a chaste romance that no one believed for a second. The result? For years, audiences got a neutered, stilted version where the real magic of Tarzan and Jane's partnership was locked in a vault. What's remarkable is that Tarzan and His Mate was so thoroughly censored, it was almost a different film. For decades, the uncut scenes were considered lost, whispered about by cinephiles as forbidden jungle lore. It wasn't until the 1980s that the original footage was restored, and viewers could finally witness the wild, unfiltered electricity of the pre-code era. So next time someone tries to tell you that old Hollywood was all prudish and proper, just point them toward this jungle romance. Even after the censors tried to scrub it clean, the real Tarzan and His Mate survived, swinging defiantly through film history, one unbroken taboo at a time. Island of Lost Souls, 1932. Welcome to the creepiest island ever put on film, a place where censorship wasn't just a threat, it was practically a co-star. Island of Lost Souls is the original adaptation of H.G. Wells's The Island of Dr. Moreau, but Hollywood's version turned the volume up to 11 and then broke the dial. Charles Laughton is Dr. Moreau, a sadistic madman playing God, surrounded by grotesque human-animal hybrids he's created through experiments that were never supposed to see the light of day. Pre-code, this film was a fever dream of taboo, body horror, torture, religious mockery, and hints of bestiality all rolled into one. There are moments where you can feel the filmmakers daring the audience to squirm. The Panther Woman, played by Kathleen Burke, is introduced as Moreau's attempt to create a woman, the script loaded with innuendo about what exactly her purpose is. Add in lines like, "Are we not men?" and you've got existential terror wrapped in B-movie camp. Unsurprisingly, censors the world over freaked out. The Hays office demanded significant cuts for American reissues. The infamous vivisection scenes were trimmed, the Panther Woman's sexuality was dialed down, and Moreau's sadism was masked wherever possible. In the UK, the film was outright banned for decades, and even in the US, most viewers only saw the butchered version. The tragedy here isn't just lost footage, it's a lost mood. The full uncut island of lost souls is suffocating, sweaty, and nihilistic, the kind of film that leaves you haunted. The recut version? Still creepy? But missing the wild, reckless soul that made it notorious. Only after relentless work by film preservationists did the uncut footage slowly trickle back into public view. In the end, Island of Lost Souls stands as proof that you can cut the film, but you can't kill the nightmare. It remains one of the most shocking, transgressive films to ever survive Hollywood's scissor-happy censors. Call Her Savage, 1932. Clara Bow was Hollywood's original It girl, but Call Her Savage is where she set the screen on fire, literally and figuratively. Bow's NASA Springer is the kind of protagonist the code feared most, wild, impulsive, and impossible to shame. The film gallops from saloons to city penthouses as NASA fights, flirts, drinks, and even hurls herself into the chaos of 1930s tabloid scandal. No pre-code drama was ever this raw, and Bow herself brought a kind of reckless, desperate energy that made every scene crackle. So when the Hays office came to town, you better believe Call Her Savage was high on their hit list. In the original release, there's a shocking sequence where NASA, at her lowest, wanders the city streets and ends up in what can only be described as a sin den, complete with hints of same-gender affection, rough trade, and feverish nightlife. There's alcoholism, marital infidelity, even a brutal scene involving a snakebite, yes, really. And through it all, Bow's character barely pretends to be sorry for her choices. The censors, predictably, had a meltdown. When the code went into effect, almost every scene with even a whiff of immorality was chopped. The notorious party scenes were edited down to incoherence. Suggestions of NASA's bisexuality vanished, and a whole subplot about her parentage and mixed heritage was sanitized. By the time Call Her Savage reached television and reissue screens, it was missing nearly 20 minutes, and with them, the entire arc of NASA's messy human journey. What's truly wild is how the edited version made Bow look almost tame. The original uncut Call Her Savage is a time capsule of pre-code mayhem, unapologetic, reckless, and real. The censored version? Just another melodrama with the sharp edges filed down. Fortunately, film fans and preservationists dug deep, and in recent years, more complete versions have resurfaced, restoring Clara Bow's full, glorious hurricane of a performance. So, next time someone says the code was just about guidance, show them what they did to Call Her Savage. When you take away the grit, the grime, and the scandal, you're not just censoring a film, you're erasing a piece of Hollywood's wildest history. The Sign of the Cross, 1932. Cecil B. DeMille was never one to shy away from spectacle, but with The Sign of the Cross, he practically dared the censors to keep up. This epic drama about early Christians in Nero's Rome is a fever dream of violence, sensuality, and over-the-top set pieces. Think lions, martyrs, and a pre-bath bomb era milk bath sequence so notorious, it became legend. In its original release, The Sign of the Cross was a jaw-dropping buffet of "what the heck did I just watch" moments. But after the code, you could say this one got a holy water dousing. The famous Dance of the Naked Moon scene, featuring a writhing dancer seducing the audience, and let's be honest, every viewer in the theater was the first to go. The wild party sequences in Nero's court, full of leering, decadent Romans and hints of every vice imaginable, slashed to pieces. The infamous milk bath scene, featuring Claudette Colbert lounging in little more than attitude and froth, was so controversial that even some pre-code audiences gasped, and the code enforcers made sure later viewers never saw it at all. In later prints, the story became a sanitized parable of good versus evil, stripped of the sinful excesses that gave it life. What was once an audacious mix of violence, seduction, and religious awe became just another epic with all the spice boiled away. The irony? DeMille had always insisted his movies had a moral core, but he knew the road to morality was a lot more interesting when it passed through the gutter. For decades, audiences saw only the neutered, recut sign of the cross. It took years of work by archivists to recover the lost footage, and even today, some scenes remain the stuff of rumor and legend. But if you ever get your hands on the most complete version, buckle up. You're in for a ride that's as outrageous as anything Hollywood ever produced, code or no code. So next time you hear that the past was always proper, remember DeMille's Epic, a movie so raucous and so defiant, it took a nationwide censorship crusade just to rein it in. She'd Done Him Wrong, 1933. You can't talk about the pre-code era without tipping your hat, maybe with a wink and a smirk, to Mae West. In She Done Him Wrong, West took the screen by storm, playing Lady Lou, a nightclub singer with a parade of admirers and a comeback for every cop, crook, or clergyman who dared question her. The film is so stuffed with double entendres it's practically a codebook for innuendo, and West herself is in total command from the first frame to the last. But the code didn't just dislike Mae West, they feared her. She Done Him Wrong was recut repeatedly for later releases. Every time the censors got a new bug in their bonnets, another risque line or sly visual gag would vanish. Gone were the suggestive songs, the not-so-subtle glances, and the jokes that left older audiences blushing and younger ones grinning. Scenes where Lady Lou entertained gentlemen callers or delivered her legendary one-liners with a languid roll of the eyes were chopped for being improper. Even the very essence of Mae West, her confidence, her defiance, was under attack. The recut versions worked hard to make her characters seem less in control, less savvy, less, well, Mae. It was like trying to edit a roaring fire down to a flickering candle. The spirit was still there, but the heat was almost gone. Yet, despite the relentless scissors, She Done Him Wrong still managed to sneak in a few of West's signature lines. "Why don't you come up sometime and see me?" became iconic, even after being targeted by censors. The edited versions dulled the edges, but Mae West was too big to fully contain. It's a testament to her power that even now, the full, unfiltered She Done Him Wrong is prized by film buffs. When you watch it, you're not just seeing a movie, you're witnessing a battle between a fearless performer and a system determined to muzzle her. And spoiler alert, in the end, Mae West still gets the last laugh. The Bitter Tea of General Yen, 1933. Frank Capra is best known for wholesome Americana, but The Bitter Tea of General Yen is the exotic, shadowy outlier in his career, an East meets West fever dream that left censors fuming. The film follows Megan Davis, played by Barbara Stanwyck, a missionary caught in war-torn China, and her complicated relationship with the enigmatic warlord General Yen, portrayed by Niels Astor in what was then termed Yellowface. Pre-code, the movie went places even today's studios hesitate. Interracial desire, power, trauma, and forbidden longing, shot in haunting chiaroscuro. When first released, The Bitter Tea of General Yen didn't hold back. The sexual tension was thick enough to slice with a bayonet, and Stanwyck's character wasn't merely tempted, she was nearly consumed. Scenes lingered on glances, trembling hands, and even a surreal dream sequence where General Yen sweeps Megan into an embrace that scandalized audiences. The film's psychological honesty and willingness to show a white woman attracted to an exotic other were more than the Hays office could handle. Once the code cracked down, the knives came out. Subsequent prints downplayed the eroticism, trimmed intimate moments, and removed lines that made Megan's attraction explicit. The infamous dream sequence was butchered to the point of incoherence, and later TV airings went even further, removing close-ups, dialogue, and any hint that Megan might desire her captor. What had been a charged study in forbidden passion was reworked into a clumsy, ambiguous morality tale. The result? The Bitter Tea of General Yen all but disappeared from mainstream view, regarded as too strange and too risky for decades. Capra himself would rarely mention it, as if embarrassed by its boldness. But as uncut versions resurfaced, critics hailed it as a lost masterpiece, Proof that, before the censors moved in, Hollywood was willing to stare down uncomfortable truths. So the next time you stumble across the bitter tea of General Yen, in all its dreamy, dangerous glory, remember how close we came to losing it altogether. Sometimes, the stories that shake us most are the very ones history tries hardest to erase. King Kong, 1933. Everybody knows King Kong as the granddaddy of monster movies, the giant ape, the screaming damsel, the Empire State Building showdown. But what most folks don't realize is how much of the original King Kong was hacked away by censors who thought even monsters should mind their manners. The pre-code cut was a wild, untamed spectacle that made jaws drop, and not just because of the stop-motion magic. There was violence, dark humor, and a subversive streak that terrified moral guardians even more than Kong terrified New Yorkers. In the original release, Kong doesn't just snatch Fay Wray's Ann Darrow. He undresses her, sniffs her, and investigates her like a curious but extremely inappropriate child. There are scenes where natives are stomped, chomped, or tossed into oblivion, and Kong's rampage through Manhattan is filled with moments of brutality and chaos that border on gleeful. Director Marion C. Cooper didn't hold back. If it was scary, thrilling, or just plain outrageous, it stayed in. When the Hays Code came down hard, so did the edits. The infamous undressing scene was the first to go, too suggestive for censors even in silhouette. The most graphic violence, like Kong biting a native or a sailor getting chewed by a dinosaur, was excised along with anything that smacked of excess. When King Kong returned to theaters in later decades, whole minutes had vanished, and some reissues felt downright choppy, with cuts that blunted the film's energy and left audiences wondering what all the fuss was about. It wasn't until the 1970s and 1980s, after dogged work by film historians and archivists, that these lost scenes began to reappear, patched back into the movie like precious artifacts. Watching the full, uncut King Kong today is a revelation. It's not just a monster movie, but a feverish, anarchic ride through the darker side of Hollywood fantasy, before the safety rails went up. King Kong isn't just about a beast run amok. It's a reminder of what happens when artists are free to push boundaries, and what's lost when the scissors come out. For decades, we only saw the shadow of the real Kong, hiding in the jungle of censorship. So, what do you think? Did Hollywood's censors save our morals, or just rob us of the wildest chapters in movie history? These films weren't just cut, they were gutted, rewritten, and almost forgotten, but their original spirit still claws its way through the edits. If you want to see how bold old Hollywood really was, dig up the uncut versions. You might never see these classics the same way again. Drop your thoughts below, hit subscribe, and keep fighting for the movies that refuse to be tamed.